Hello and welcome to ZBrush 4 R2. So ZBrush 4 R2, it's a small little name change from ZBrush 4, but man, this is a massive upgrade in terms of functionality. So we're going to make sure to give you all the information that you need to master ZBrush, understand how this program works, understand how it thinks, because that's the key thing for me, is that you understand, or you start to understand, how ZBrush thinks. Once you understand how it thinks, you're on the path to mastering it. Then you're in great shape. So let's start this off by doing a little tour of the interface. I just want to introduce you to some of the language that I'll be using and the common terms and just the general areas that you want to be aware of. So right off the bat, the one thing you want to be aware of is this thing called a tray. So the tray is where you can put menus. Okay, and the tool palette is a menu. Menus are also along the top. These are also called palettes in ZBrush's documentation. Now, when I was working at Pixelogic, we contemplated changing the name palettes to menus. Then we contemplated how much time we would have had to spend rewriting documentation, and we said palettes is a great name. So we kept it palettes. It's interchangeable. Call them menus, call them palettes, doesn't matter. You'll find me calling them both. So keep that in mind. If somebody says palette, there it is. If it's a sub-palette, then that means that it's a little interface item in the tool palette. So something that's going to be listed there. So we'll see that. Okay, now what you need to know about trays is they have a little interface item here. You see these arrows? That's how you open and close a tray. And what you might notice is that is on both sides of what's known as our canvas. So in the center is the canvas. Just this thing that has that grayscale background. Okay, let's unpack the rest of this real quick. I'm going to get rid of this screen drawing. The tray opens and closes with the arrows that I mentioned. You can open the tray over here, and you can see that they've already populated it with a menu, the material menu. Okay, now just because it's in the tray doesn't mean that it goes away from the top. It's still listed here. If you open it, it does go out of the tray though. It'll move from the tray to here, or just it's kind of hidden. It doesn't really move. Tray, canvas, which we're going to be spending all of our time in. Okay, lightbox. Lightbox is this thing along the top of the canvas. In earlier versions, it was something that was down at the bottom. Okay, it's controlled by that button right there, and also by the comma key. Okay, the comma key will turn that on and off. So I'm just going to turn my screen draw off, press the comma, get this thing to update, that is. There we go. And there's the comma. You can just press comma to turn it on and off. Alright, other elements to be aware of. The shelf. All the way around the canvas is what's known as the shelf. Okay, and the shelf contains several different items. Okay, the items on the left of the canvas, these are what are known as, let's just call them quick palettes. This is the brush, stroke, alpha, texture, material. Okay, and these correspond to the palette. So alpha is over here, texture over there, and material right there. They're a quick version of it. So what that means is that when you click the material quick palette, you get basically all the materials here. You don't get all of the material controls and sub palettes. Remember we mentioned sub palettes earlier. You won't get these. Okay. The other thing to know about subpalettes is that you have to click the name to open them, and then you can get to their controls. So sometimes you'll open up something like, let's say, alpha, and it doesn't look like there's anything going on. Just click these subpalette names, and you'll see all the controls. All right, there's color controls down here. That includes a color swatch, the primary and secondary color, switch color, just to switch back and forth, in this thing called alternate, which is a brand new to ZBrush 4R2 and makes you paint the opposite color when you press Alt. All right. Now along the top, we have a couple of just plugins. These are just primary plugins that Pixologic wants to make sure you're aware of. Projection Master, largely it's just deprecated now, let's put it that way. It's mostly gone. It was important in ZBrush 2, but less so now. Quick Sketch, you'll see if that's useful for you or not. But Lightbox is the one you'll be using the most. Okay, right next to those plugins, you'll see things like Edit, Draw, Scale, and Rotate. So Edit mode is important. That's what you're going to be in most of the time when you're working with the model. MRGB, Z Grabber, and Z Add, and Z Sub, and Z Cut over here. These are controls for your brush. That's the best way to think about them. So they're on right now because they have other uses, but when you've got a brush active, you can be using Z Add, Z Sub, Z Intensity, RGB for poly paint, and RGB intensity. And then you have controls over here for the brushes. Let's just drag it from the side. And focal shift and draw size. Focal shift is going to determine the hardness and softness. Draw size is the size of your brush. Pretty straightforward. Let's get in and start working with a material, a project, sorry, let me say it that way, so that we can start looking at and understanding the buttons on the right. So by default, project is selected. I'm going to just go default Dynawax 64, double click it, and now I've got a model that has a wax material. A whole bunch of stuff has gone on. We've got a different material here. Colors have changed. We're in edit mode. That's really important. So the project has kind of set us up for a little bit of success. And if we get in there to start sculpting on the model, well, we start sculpting and we can start to work with something. Alright, now the controls I want you to be aware of right off of the bat, the controls that are really important for you to understand, are in a couple of pairs. So there is move, scale, and rotate. Okay, those are navigation controls. Those are how you move the model around. Scroll, zoom, actual, AA, half, those have to do with the canvas. So those have to do with how you're going to move the canvas around, whether you're going to zoom in and out of the canvas, things like that. So keep in mind, there is a canvas, which is that space that the model exists in, and then there's the model. So now let's take a look at canvas first, because it's going to be straightforward and you're not going to use it too much. Scroll. You can see the edge of that canvas right there. You can click that button and drag left, right, up, and down, and you're going to scroll it around. You'll see that it's kind of pre-fits the opening. That's something that Pixologic does. It's part of the code. No matter what size ZBrush is, first time you open it, the document is going to usually try to be the size, well, it's going to try to be 1-to-1 pixel ratio with your screen and with the available space. Where is that information stored? In the document menu. So if I go into document, you see width and height. Your numbers are going to be different depending upon your screen resolution. Now I'm working on a Cintiq, and it's set to a low resolution for my recording, 1280 by 960. So with all the stuff around the sides, that basically leaves me with a canvas that's only 894 pixels wide and 838 pixels tall. Again, ZBrush figures that out for you. Alright, now the ability to move the model around, we're going to look at that in a little bit more depth in a moment, but I want to just introduce you to the buttons themselves. So first off, move, click, and drag. And I'm just clicking and then moving my cursor around. That's it. Scale. For scale, you're going to click on the button and drag up or down. Okay, as you drag up, it goes away. As you drag down, it comes towards you. Okay, rotate. Click this button and then you just drag in any direction and it'll start to rotate the model around. But this is kind of a free-form rotation. It's going to rotate in any direction. So it can get hard to control. And if it gets hard to control, what you might want to do is take a look at some of these buttons here. Try not to get distracted. I'm not going to introduce you to them in any major way right now. I'm just going to say, hey, take a note. Alright, click, rotate, drag around. By default, the last point you click is the pivot. So let's pick this point on the left, and now that's the pivot. It's be much more obvious when you're working on something other than a sphere. Okay, move and rotate. Now, one thing to note, the hotkeys for all of these can be found when you press Control and you hover over the interface item. Press Control, hover over it. Second paragraph starts talking about the hotkeys. Same with scale. Okay, in this case, third paragraph explains it. And in move, third paragraph. So all you're doing is clicking and dragging or using the hotkeys. And hotkeys are something we're going to look at next.